Hi everyone, and welcome back to our Welsh Dream podcast. So today we're joined by Hayley. Hayley is a wellbeing expert, but I'll just leave it to her to introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Hayley Wheeler. I am the creator of Emotion Mind Dynamic, and I'll tell you a little bit about why I created that as we go ahead with the podcast.
Okay, yeah, actually you can just go ahead and just tell us then, yeah.
So I started my business back in 2012 and things were going okay, and then in 2015 I hit rock bottom, but I hadn't realised I'd been going into depression for 5 years. But 2015 was my kind of spiralling moment, and in the July of 2015 I hit rock bottom, and that was the first time, and I thought I was low then, but then in the October I had a second rock bottom where I had this really intrusive, it was a devastating thought which I never thought I'd have, and I knew at that point I had to change. So I'd kind of let things go. I knew I wasn't well. I didn't know, I didn't really define it very well. I just kept going. As a mum, you just keep going and running a business. And I just was failing at everything, or so I thought. So this thought was like, okay, it is now you either walk away from your family or you do something about it. And my option was to stay with the family and really fight, which I did. And then I helped at the same time, and this is an intermingled story, at the same time I discovered my son had anxiety and I was born with it. And so 11 years of what I thought were temper tantrums and just a spoiled child were anxiety attacks and panic attacks. And the pair of us nearly lost their lives in birth, but nobody really sat us down at that point and talked about birth trauma and what can happen, and yet we lived with those consequences. And so I helped him first. He was my motivator. Helped him first because I knew if he found drugs he was going to love drugs. So I knew I had to help him.
And that early on as well, you don't want to get him on that, yeah.
No, you have to be really aware. I think it's so easy to come by. Now drugs are easy to come by, so even at 11, 12 they're in the schools, they're around the schools. So I knew if he found them that I had to do something now, and I didn't even contemplate medication. Don't know why. I just knew I needed to help him, and we fought back and forth to figure out what anxiety was, what he was doing for him, his inside things were happening, the patterns. And once he was done, he'd gone from 8 to 9 panic attacks a day to nothing. He hasn't had anything in nearly 7 years, so in September it'll be 7 years. It was my turn, and I thought, using the information I'd kind of learned from him, using my self-development stuff that I'd done previously, I used all that information to just battle and understand myself. And that, for me, that's what I needed. I didn't need the medication. I didn't need sort of therapy, really. I just needed to understand myself and my depression. And the one skill I did learn that I am so grateful for is emotional processing, expressing and releasing, which is something we don't do. So that kind of forms the part of, the main part of Emotion Mind Dynamic.
Okay, so can you tell us a bit more about that?
Yeah, so it's one of my favourite things. I do love it. I get to help people go from surviving and existing to thriving and living, and it's amazing, because I remember being there. So when people come to me, I remember what it was like to be in that darkness. So they come and they are struggling, and more often than not they've had some kind of therapy before. So they tend to come with this, I don't think this is going to work, and I like a challenge, so I invite them to take it on anyway, because for a lot of them they feel like it's their last chance. So they commit, and I work with them over 6 sessions, but the sessions are variable in length. They can be up to 4 hours long. So quite some, we do a lot of in-depth work. But for me it means that they are not watching the clock all the time. So when they come, they know they've got 4 hours booked, and that if we don't do the 4 hours, that's fine, but they've got that time to get the stuff out, because we do homework. They do a lot of work. I'm quite lucky I don't do the hard work. So they come, we do a behaviour analysis first. We look at the behaviours they're using to cope, the behaviours they use to get through their day, the chaotic sort of coping strategies. Then we do the coaching model in the first session. Then I share my journey in the second session, because I'm asking them to do it quite in-depth work, so I share mine with them, and I take that step. Every step I ask them to take, I take it first. So I share my life reflections, and that's their homework. Now that can take 2 to 3 weeks, and then that will be usually a 4-hour session. I've done one 7-hour session.
That's a full working day.
Yeah. I loved it. I so enjoyed it. Then they come back and they share, this is where the time really is important, giving them that time to look at things. But I don't look at things from what they've been through. I look at the emotional impact. So as much as they're looking at the sequence of their life experience, we're looking at what did that mean for you, short term and long term. Because you have that immediate impact, but it has a lot of long-term implications as well. So they're looking at that. And that's slightly different than just talking about, well, I feel like this today. Because I was like, at that time I felt like this. And then, so I'll give you one example. One lady's dad had left when she was 7.
Right.
And her pattern became unhealthy relationships. Because she felt she was unworthy. So that belief, the emotional impact and the belief system that she developed from that had a long-lasting effect on her life. Then we do a relationship evaluation which looks at a particular relationship that has an impact on them, but we will look at, most people now are choosing to look at themselves, to look at who they are, the mistakes they've made, the good decisions they've made, because we balance this one. Whereas the life reflections is about the bad stuff and the real bad emotional impact. The relationship evaluation is about balance and looking at that relationship for the good and the bad, because if you're looking at yourself, it's so easy to self-punish. Look at the mistakes, look at all the bad things you've done. So by balancing, you start to actually see some of the good stuff you've done, which a lot of people don't. Then we do the letter. I love the letter because it is structured. We've had like 30 pages letters. We've had some long letters, but it is really structured. They follow a particular structure and they can write that structure several times throughout the letter, no matter how many times they need to write it, to make sure we process, express and release, because that's the thing that's missing. And then the final session then is they come back and we do sort of your foundational work. So they've done the deep-rooted work. Now it's about putting the foundations in and making sure that they continue with it, because it doesn't end there. That's just the starting point. And as hard as it's been, they need some more foundations to be able to keep going with their well-being. And that for me is, I just love the whole process. I say this all the time. This is important and this is important. And it's all important because you are the most important person in your world. And if you don't do that work, it can be tough. It can be really tough.
So when you're working with people, a client for the first time, what's your goal for, I mean, they will have their goals for themselves, but for you, with every single client that you see, what's your goal for them?
I just want them to understand themselves. So it's not, my job is to facilitate, to teach, to coach, to mentor and give all these skills. Now I'm quite lucky, whereas counselling can only do one thing. I can do them all. So in moments where they don't understand themselves, I can teach. So I might teach about self-esteem. We might talk about healthy boundaries, healthy relationships. And then it may be a case of asking them questions and getting them to think about, okay, what do I already understand? How do I bring this together? So it's quite it's a lovely process because I get to dip in and out of those skills. And I want them to understand themselves better than they understand anybody else. Because you probably know your friends better than you know yourself.
Well, that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
But I think very common. And then in that sense, why is it important for us to understand ourselves? What value does that bring, I guess, in general?
Okay, so we go to school, we go to college, we go to university, and we know about the world. So we know maths, great. We know English, history, geography. We may specialise as we go through the university, but nobody teaches us about ourselves. So we get to the point where they say, right, education's done, get out and do life. Okay, so what does life mean? What is happiness? How do I build myself? Who am I in this world? Who am I in my world? How do I understand the world? So we've done all this learning about the world, but then we kind of feel a bit lost in it. So as you start to understand yourself, you start to make better decisions. You start to decide that actually that meaning of success doesn't fit me. I don't agree with that meaning of success. Money doesn't mean anything to me. Actually, my family means more, or vice versa. But it's about you knowing, if you know what you like, dislike, what makes you happy, what makes you sad, then you can make decisions. And yet so many people can't.
Yeah, so knowing yourself is, because I'm trying to do stuff like business, side hustle myself, and I think understanding what makes me tick has been a massive part of that journey, to find that passion, or to even find my, a partner, or just orientate yourself in the world, you kind of need to know yourself, and that is a journey of looking inwardly. I think we're just primed to be looking out naturally, looking for a job, looking for a partner. It's all out in the world, but I think the work actually starts inside. So that really resonates.
Yeah. And I think as well, I don't understand why, I don't think it's the teacher's responsibility, but I don't understand why we don't do it younger. Why do we leave people get to a point where they're stressed and they don't understand themselves before we intervene? And I was told 4 years ago now that I shouldn't be doing the work that I'm doing. I shouldn't be working in mental health because I could damage people, because I'm not a psychologist. I don't have your traditional qualifications. I have qualifications, but they're not sort of accepted in that umbrella. And that really wobbled me. So I thought, and what she'd said was that her words were, go and train to be a psychologist and then come back to mental health. And I was like, okay. So I went and looked at mental health, and I thought, we have these professionals who have this information about us and how we work, but they don't share it until we're broken. Why are we not sharing it sooner?
Yeah.
Why are we not teaching children that if you're the funny one in class, that's fine. Okay, there's appropriate times to be funny, and sometimes it's not appropriate, but if you're the funny one, if you're the one that's good at English, if you're the one that's good at maths, if you're the one that's not good at school, it's okay. But we are trying to pigeonhole children into fitting in. Yeah. And they don't know who they are. And so for me, it's that journey of, who am I? Where am I in the world? How do I fit in my world? What do I understand about the world? Yeah. And who is this person that I can relate to that person to be my partner?
Yeah. I think what you said there, how can you, as an adult, as a person, be able to teach that to children when you don't have that on your own? So I think that's why it's important, because it's clearly a cycle where, it has to start somewhere, and then we build up in terms of, as we go forward with future generations, I guess, because it just starts now, we start somewhere, right?
Yes. Yeah. If we start in the middle, no, that's fine.
Yeah.
But there's yeah, definitely. But we can start earlier. Yeah. If we get it right. I think we do a lot of talking about well-being and mental health in schools, and we're getting better at it. But I still feel like there is a missing link when it comes to well-being and understanding what that is.
On that then, firstly, what is well-being, and why should we care, and why should it be sort of the foundation of who we are really as a person?
I think well-being is a term that is well used now. It's very well
everywhere.
Used. Yeah, we've got policies, we've got it all. Yeah. But I think understanding, why do we need to be well? What does that mean for us? And what happens if we're not well? And well-being is really defined by you. What that means in your life is an individual thing. Yes, we have your umbrella terms about well-being is the state of your body, your mind, your spirit, all these things. We have those broader definitions, but you get to define, what does well-being mean to me? What do I need in my life? How do I need to operate? What makes me operate at that level?
So it's saying, if I'm working at my optimum, or if I'm at my happiest, basically, that's the highest state of my well-being. So what brings me to that place? Is that then what it is?
Yeah, because it can be happiness, it can be your physical health, your mental health, your emotional health, your spiritual health, it's a health in general. Social media health, big thing. What impacts you? What makes you feel worse, better? So if you're on social media for 3 hours, how do you feel when you come off? Does that have an impact on how you operate? Are you happy with your days? Have you gone through your day and gone, no, I'm not happy. I'm actually not just not happy, I'm unhappy, or I'm sad. And by recognising that, you start to go, okay, so what's making me sad? And I love questions. Start asking those different questions. Don't ask why. Why do I feel like that? Take that away.
Okay,
why away.
Why not why?
Because I think why is quite an accusatory question.
Even to yourself?
Yes, because I think we feel like, why? What is wrong with me? Why am I not doing what they are doing? It feels like a big pressure. Whereas if you start to ask the questions, okay, what do I need to do? What is happening for me that I can't do that? Those are very different questions, and your mind is going to find different answers for you. So when you ask why, your mind is on one track. When you ask different questions, your mind goes, I want to find the answer to that. And you start looking in different directions.
Different questions. Yeah. I think our previous guest, he was, the things he was saying, we were just questioning
life.
It just makes you question life.
Yeah.
And I said that's a good attribute almost
Yes.
of a potential entrepreneur, because all the examples he was giving is people who have gone, they could have joined the family business, but they question, is that right for them? And they started their own thing, and that business goes downhill in the end. So are they more entrepreneurial by, working for a company in that instinct? It's a kind of, the questioning, I think, is a key thing if you want to find your own way in life and do what's right for you.
Absolutely.
But I think on that, a lot of people, even, some of my friends, whatever, I see that a lot of people are scared of exploring that. I think it's a scary place. You see, then people tend to then end up spending a lot of time in circles with other people. They just don't want to be alone, in silence, or then let alone questioning these things and then having to answer them.
Yeah.
So I don't know, what are your thoughts around that?
I think when you start to do those different questions, you start to open up the circles, so you're not going round in circles all the time. But people are comfortable. We like familiarity, we like predictability. So we will surround ourselves with things that are familiar and predictable, which then means that our comfort zone becomes smaller and smaller. Who we spend time with becomes smaller and smaller. Because they're comfortable, they're predictable, they may think the same as us, whereas somebody thinking something different, I'm not ready for that. I don't know if you've heard about the crabs in the bucket.
Yeah.
It's a similar thing, isn't it? That people, they do flock with people who allow them to be in that, I say comfort, it's not comfortable. It's just familiar and predictable.
And it drags you down though, because that's the whole thing with the analogy, right?
Yes.
When one wants to climb out and then the others just pull it back. So, yeah, okay.
And I think it is scary. Change, I like change, but change is scary for a lot of people. So if I'm going to step out of this, that I know that if X happens here, A is going to happen X. If I need to step out of that, I'm looking for more familiarity and predictability. But outside there is not familiar and predictable. You don't know what's going to happen. So when you are the best version of yourself, then that becomes less worrisome, less sort of stressful, and more possible. Because what we're looking for is possibility. But you don't know what's possible until you understand yourself.
Yeah, because then you're acting on things that you think are good for you. And if that's like a very true process and you're sure that, the more you know yourself, the more you're going to be sure that what you're going to do is right for you or wrong for you. So it's that orientation in the world, really.
And it's risk as well, isn't it? You don't like risk. I'm a little bit risk averse, but I will, because I know myself, I will know how far I can push myself, and I know that I maybe have to push myself a little bit further in some areas, and that's something I still have to work on, because it is a lifelong journey. You don't learn about yourself and then you're done. Because you change,
exactly.
Life today something will happen and you will learn something today that you didn't know yesterday, and then the same tomorrow, and then you would make different decisions tomorrow based on what you've learned today that you would have made a completely different decision yesterday. But again, it's that self-knowledge.
Where do values fit into all of this?
Lots of people don't know their values, but your values are a layer of your well-being, because with your values, they're your guide to how you want to behave in the world and what you want in the world. So as you set your values, you have, so I see it as having core values, those are your central values. And outside of that, you've got your well-being values, your family values, your relationship values, professional values, business values, social media values. I'm going to throw that in because I think it's important. But by understanding those values, you get to decide, is this the right person, the right situation, the right guide for me? When you don't know them, your body will tell you. Your body knows them and your mind knows them.
Even if you might know.
Have you ever been in a situation, whether it's a new job or a new person, and everybody else thinks it's wonderful and everything seems great, but there's something inside going, no, don't do it, and you just can't figure it out? There's your values. That's your body.
There's a clash then somewhere.
Your head, your brain and your stomach send signals back and forth to one another, and it's the only organ in the body that like goes back and forth communicating with signals.
Okay.
So when you get like a bad gut feeling, that's connected to your head, and your mental health will make your stomach feel weird as well. So they actually
when you're anxious, for example,
It's the only part of the body that goes back and forth. It's interesting.
That's interesting. There was something on this. I haven't looked into too much, but the heart being like the brain, it has the same sort of makeup as the brain.
Right.
So they say that there's 3 brains. There's the gut, the heart, and the actual brain. I'm going to look more into that, but it's a really interesting concept. But I think the gut, we learn to stop listening to the gut instinct. That's the biggest problem we've got with children. And one of the examples I give is that, do you know, if you were a child and you've got a relative or a friend of the family and your parents always say, go kiss them goodbye, and you really don't want to kiss them goodbye and they force you to kiss them goodbye, then there's maybe something else that they force you to do that you feel is not right for you. The more times they do that, you lose connection with your gut because you start to think that there must be something wrong with you. If they think it's safe, why is my gut telling me it's not? So we stop listening.
Right.
So we kind of teach that out to children, which is why when that gut, you know it's there, you know that niggle, and you think, are you
don't trust yourself, it's a thing. So
that's the thing. And if you've made, as you go along, if you've had that in childhood, and as you go along, you've made bad relationship decisions which have gone wrong, or you've made bad job decisions, or things that you've done and you thought, oh, I've really messed up there, you start to believe that there's no trust there. And we've got this thing about saying, I don't trust people. Trust is always an inside job. Always. It comes from here. If you trust yourself to make the right
going
decision.
deep. Okay.
I like to. But if you trust yourself to make decisions, you'll know who to trust and what to trust. You'll make mistakes, of course you will. You'll get things wrong because we're not perfect. But the more in tune you are with your gut, the trust is there.
So how do we work towards that place then, when it's been suppressed all our lives or whatever it is? How do we come back to that place where we foster that, relationship with our mind and our gut, and just building that trust in ourselves first?
Listen to your gut, because there's that red flag. You look back at some relationships or friendships and you go, I knew the first time I met them, I knew. There's
you ignored it and you just left it.
And those are the times you'll have made the mistake, because you'll have known it's there. Your gut is telling you. So if you think about a rabbit in the forest, they hear a branch breaking. They have to decide in a split second, do I run or am I safe? We're the same, because your gut is saying this is safe. It's safe emotionally, it's safe sexually, it's safe physically, it's safe spiritually, mentally. Your gut is telling you this is a safe space. If it's going off, it's not safe. And not necessarily that you're going to be injured physically, but potentially emotionally, mentally, relationship-wise, sexually. And it's telling you these things. So, and business decisions, as we've talked a bit about business, and I know we'll go into that a little bit more, but you have to learn to connect with your gut, because your gut will tell you this person is not good.
We're still animals. We might have evolved to, all these different... We're still beings of nature, so we would have once had that kind of flight or fight response. That's kind of what it is, isn't it? They're kind of just, we're sensed into more than we realise. Animals have different senses, and it's all feeding in, and we're probably only perceiving like a small bandwidth of what's actually happening, and then we probably get a thought, and it's how much you trust yourself then, and that probably comes from knowing yourself. It's like, do I trust what my mind is saying? And you should really, because you are your world. It's all generated from inside.
Yes.
So yeah.
Okay, so then what do you think are sort of the biggest challenges that people face in general? We can speak about entrepreneurs or people who want to start up something, but more broadly as well, what are the biggest challenges that you think we face in terms of our well-being?
I would say at the moment social media is one of the biggest. It's so intrusive, but we are allowing it. We are giving our time, our energy to social media, and it's not a bad thing, but it's been designed to keep you hooked on social media. And while you're in social media, you're not in the real world. You're not connecting with people face to face, skin to skin, you know, body language to body language, there's no connection there. We need that too. But equally, we're not thinking. We're so distracted by reels and content and people's lives. You know, we're curious. We like to know about people's lives. But if you're given 3 to 4 to 5, 6, 7, 8 hours a day around your job, around whatever else is going on in your life, that's a lot of time to not be thinking about yourself. Whereas if you give yourself time to be with you, I'd love to know how many people can actually say, hand on heart, I love spending time with me. I don't think many people do. So we pick up the phone.
To remove yourself from that. Yeah.
It's a distraction, and then we're not focused on our well-being, we're not focused on mindset, we're not focused on anything other than what's on that phone. You know, there's a digital well-being check on all phones, and it's surprising, notifications, 400 a day on one of my days. And if you think about how many times you've gone, oh, notification, you might not have picked the phone up,
but it's there.
It's in your mind, it's distracted you. So if you've got into a flow of, all right, I'm going to do this for my self-care today, I'm going to sit and take time out, notification, that's just taken, it might be a split second, but it's taken time away from you investing in yourself. And I think that's the next one, is not knowing that we are an investment. You are your biggest investment. How do you be the best version of yourself if you don't invest in yourself? Personally, professionally. We do it professionally.
Mm-hmm. It's easier in a professional sort of environment, but like you're saying, personally, how? Because we just tend to neglect ourselves. If it's either taking care of other people or just other things beyond just taking care of ourselves.
Yeah. And your job will guide you. You have to have CPD, so you have all these rules in your job. And actually we know how to do that in our job, but we don't know how to do it at home. So we go, I'll do it next week. I'll do it tomorrow.
And no one is there to sort of hold you to account, because like you're saying, in work, you will have maybe other people to hold you to account. But then if it's personally, it's just up to you. No one is coming and saying, have you, you know, so yeah, it is.
So you need to be that person. And that can be a challenge, because there's always something else to do.
Yeah.
But if you start to put those things in your diary and you see it as an investment as opposed to how do people view self-care sometimes, it's intrusive. Oh, but I haven't got time. But you've got time to scroll on social media. You've never not got time.
Yeah.
So I think it's important.
I think a lot of self-care actually involves doing less as well, which is kind of it's almost like that flip again from looking out to looking in. You're like, oh, I need to do self-care, which is, it's actually almost, you know, switching off and spending some time alone, maybe just walking in the woods. And it's almost like the opposite of what people actually think, and you have to look the other way, where we're not trained to, you know, the system or whatever it is. We're just naturally looking outwardly, and I think that's other just human behaviour or culture. Yeah.
It is the system, like you're saying, I think, which links back to even the social media. Everything is just go.
Yeah, look at other people's
exactly, and
lives.
then look at other people's lives, and then here you are feeling inadequate with yours, and they're not investing in it. It's just a vicious cycle, though, isn't it?
It is, and you have to then decide, where does it stop?
Yeah, okay.
How do I stop? So if it's comparison, it's so easy, isn't it? Look at their life, it looks perfect on social media. But the reality is it's not. That's a snapshot, isn't it?
And no one is posting the reality of that. You know, everyone is posting the highlights of their day,
I do
essentially.
love the reality ones.
Yeah.
Have you seen that? Where people do like a comparison, where they'll do, you know, be a girl and she'll be like, this is what you see, and then she'll like pull her tummy out. I absolutely love that kind of content. Yeah.
We need more of that, don't we? We need more of reality on social media.
Less serious and more just real.
Yes, because I think we have we lost sight already? Are we on the way to losing sight of what real world is? You know, you look at children now.
VR. I'm just thinking about that.
I know.
VR now. So.
The AI. You know, there's this big push with AI at the moment. Now I find AI. I can't use AI because it's so. It just says the same thing as everybody else does. I don't work like that.
Oh, you and Brian are the same.
Yeah.
I'm pro AI, but anyway.
You know, AI, great tool. Everything's a great tool, isn't it?
Yeah.
But you can always put the tool down. But if you're not putting the tool down, then it is in control of you.
There's a problem.
Yeah.
But if you go back to investing in yourself, so I am the most important.
You can,
most important person, then I get that investment in me.
Amazing.
So back to social media again, because I think this is a big thing with a lot of people. You know, it's stopping people's productivity, just people investing in their relationships, their real relationships in life, basically, because they're just stuck on their phones. So are there any sort of practical strategies that you've maybe applied or shared with your clients that people can try adapt if they are stuck in that, in that route?
For me, social media is wonderful. It connects people in a sense. But if it's the only way you're connecting, then you're missing out on that person-to-person contact. And I think if you've got so much time and energy invested in it, then you're missing your connection with yourself. So it's about really understanding. Go back to assessing. We assess, where am I with it? Look at the digital well-being on your phone. Without a shadow of a doubt, it's shocking how many hours you spend on what app. I had quite a friend, because I was like 9 hours on YouTube, and I was like, 9 hours? But I put things on when I go to bed.
Okay, like music. Okay.
Yeah, meditation and things, and I was like, 9 hours on YouTube, I was trying to justify it to children. Yeah, I was. But starting with that, where am I with it? How many times you unlock your phone is shocking. 96 times
in a day.
How many times is that an hour?
Because you're only awake for like 12 hours.
I'm awake for about 19.
19? Okay.
Sometimes longer, yeah.
Oh wow, okay.
So 96 doesn't sound so bad, but then it's still a lot.
It's still a lot, yeah.
So you can look at how many notifications you get. So do you need all those notifications coming through the day? Do you turn them off? Is that, if your phone is integral to business or family life, great, but do you need all of those notifications? Yeah. Do you need to be on YouTube for 4 hours? It might be that you've learned something that day. It might be that you found a wonderful course or a book, because you can get the audiobooks on there, great. But if that's every day, are you really listening to that book every day? But do you want to be on there? What are you getting out of social media that you're not getting in the real world? Distraction is, I would say, probably the top.
I think so.
Just not thinking. How many of us think when you're on social media?
No, you don't. It's mindless. It really is mindless. So because right now social media, like you said, it's an amazing tool, especially for business. If you're self-employed, if you're just one single entrepreneur starting a business, if you're already a business. So how do you strike that balance, really?
Well, it's understanding what's needed for the business and how much you're saying, I'm just going on for the business, and you end up scrolling for half an hour.
Right.
That's very different, isn't it? But yes, if you need it for the business, great, use it. It's a wonderful thing to get you connected with your community that you need to connect with, but know where your boundaries are. Yeah. And I think boundaries, again, are things that people lose on social media, particularly with how we behave on social media. We are very different, I think, on social media than we are at home. Right. You wouldn't necessarily say some of the things that you say on social media. Twitter's a big one. But having the boundary between, right, I'm going to go on for half an hour to write my content, or I'm going to go on and post, I'm going to connect to people. Great, wonderful, but have your cut-off point. Know what your cut-off point needs to be. If I start scrolling, mind to say I need to stop. Without being too harsh on yourself as well.
Yeah, because you might enjoy it and you might learn some stuff.
Yes.
I know some people who they just delete the apps and only reinstall them when they need it, which is kind of a bit militant, but they said their lives got a lot better because of that. It's focus, it's energy, and you put that somewhere else then. And if you compare that amount of genuine interactions with people, then I think that's the two numbers you want to put against each other to kind of really shock the system.
That's a good comparison. There's lots and not on social media. It's a good way of looking at, so what have I got out of that? If you know what you want out of it as well, if you know that within the next half an hour I want to speak to 3 people on social media and these are the 3 people, go and do that thing. Then you come off it. Equally, if it is a good thing for you to distract for 15 minutes, then make it 15 minutes.
Yeah, put the time.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. And you can do that on your phone. There's settings to allow you to do that on your phone. And you say with somebody being militant, taking apps off. If that's what you need, that's what you need. If that's what you know, again, self-knowledge, isn't it? If that's what you know you need to do for yourself, do it.
You might have like a addictive personality or
But it's not only that. That's what the apps are created to do, to hook you on. So I think you just have to be very intentional to fight back, because that's what it's meant to do.
Yeah,
that's its job.
It's the whole like dopamine
Exactly.
isn't it? Like,
Exactly.
it's giving you even the notifications. I don't have notifications on because it's just constant. Little. Your brain's just it is loving it whether you love it or not.
Absolutely, your brain's connected to it.
Yeah.
And I say this all the time. The most shocking thing I saw, it was a good few years ago, was a baby bouncer with an iPad in it, a holder, and I just, babies.
Yeah, I've seen
please
that.
don't do that to your babies. I don't
Well, people are
say
doing
much.
it. Well, people are doing it because
know.
it's easy, right? It's easy. Instead of you just actually parenting and spending time, actually, people just give the child YouTube or whatever it is, and I'm like,
At a restaurant as well, I've seen it. Whether it's the parents, maybe the 8-year-old, and then the baby, and the baby's in like a high chair, and they've just got like an iPad mount in front of their face, and I don't even think the parents can see the kid's face because it's just like up here. And just like, something is that's like red flags.
We went out when the children leave. When they start in school, we've taken one now because there's 4 of them. They very rare get time on their own with a parent, particularly 2 parents.
Okay.
So when they've started comp, we've taken them out for food, just both the parents and the child. That's hard work to get them together. The last time we went, there was a dad and a daughter sitting next to us. He spent all his time on his phone, and she was trying to talk. And I'm happy to talk to people. We were talking to her, but Dad spent all the time from before food, during food, and after food.
Yeah.
And you know what? That's what she's going to learn is a date.
You model it.
Oh yeah, exactly. Because you learn from your parents, exactly.
And phones are wonderful. They are, again, it's a tool. And I know myself, when I was really bad at depression, I used to take the children out. So my thing was, I always wanted to be a good parent regardless, and it was hard. So I used to take them to the park, and it's this one particular day, 1 out of 5 years, or 8 years altogether, I took them to the park and I said, go and play. Because I would push them on the swings, I'd join them on the swings. Even when I was unwell, I would still do that, but that particular day, I just couldn't, and I sat on my phone. I just needed to be out of everything, I just needed that distraction. But the guilt. And I wanted to say to people, I was doing a bit of work on it. I have spent all morning with the children. I've baked with them. I've done all this stuff. I've done stuff after as well. But I felt the need to justify because I was on the phone. It felt awful because that's not who I am. But I desperately needed that. And I think I'm sometimes a little bit fast to judge parents when I see them with a phone and a baby. So I get there's definitely a balance to be had with it.
Could be having a bad day or bad. But that's in yourself, you're able to look at that situation and go, I value human connection over technology. Whereas if someone hasn't done self-work or inwardly looking at themselves, then that might not even register at all. So they can just go through life and it'd be fine, but I don't think it is fine.
But we can pretend, can't we?
Yeah, definitely, yeah.
And I think pretending is really harsh on well-being. I think you can pretend for so long. It's same in business, you can pretend things are going well in business for so long, and then things come crashing down because you haven't done what you need to do. And it's the same with life and well-being and whatever you're building. You can only pretend for so long before something happens, and it's either a stark reminder that you need to engage again, because engagement is so important in real life. We're engaging with our phone, and it's having an impact on community, individual, family, community, the whole spectrum of people and connections.
Makes people a little bit more individual, more focused on their individualistic. I've lost the word.
The world. They think the world revolves around themselves, basically.
Yeah.
More individualistic.
It's like an echo chamber, isn't it?
Yeah.
That especially now with AI and what you type on YouTube or Facebook, it kind of gives back to you what you've put in, and
even just conversations that we're having, and then you see ads,
which creates more like narrow field of view, really, which is going to keep that comfort zone and that circle smaller. Where if you're going to go out and speak to a group of people, someone might say something that is completely out of your comfort
Yeah.
zone, and that's opening your mind then, and that's a positive impact. Well, I just don't think social media has that. Obviously, you can find some content that does that, but you know, it's still within that bandwidth because it's getting so good at suggesting what you like, isn't it? So
Algorithms.
that's also an issue.
A term I heard last night is doom scrolling. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, that's what my girlfriend calls it.
Okay.
Doom scrolling.
It's kind of looking for things that confirm what you already feel and think. So you actually, so if you're having a bad day, you will go looking for things that reinforce that this is a bad day or a bad week, or it's like confirmation bias, isn't it? When you're looking, if you believe a certain thing, then you're looking for the messages that reinforce it.
And you will find them as the thing.
Whatever you're looking for, you find
Yeah.
It's all out there.
Oh, definitely.
Right or wrong, and
But that's where the universe comes in, right? Because if you're more intentional about actually trying to be positive, you will attract more positive as well.
that's right.
Yeah. So, well, I guess for us, most of our viewers, our listeners, are people either who've already started their own businesses or are thinking about it. So, firstly, how can people think about their well-being when it comes to them as an entrepreneur? And just not ignore it, because I think it's something that's very easy to just not prioritize.
One of the statistics to remember is 5 in 6 business owners struggle with some kind of mental health challenge. So it could be sleep, lack of sleep, stress, anxiety.
That's too high.
It's a high percentage because, particularly if you're on your own, if you're a sole trader or you're just you, it's you have to do everything. So being mindful of having your boundaries in place and knowing that there's a cut-off point, because you can work 24/7 and you will work 24/7. There are days when you have to keep going. I'm quite lucky in terms of I work around my children, so they kind of keep me grounded with business. But I know when I was really unwell, I would work until 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, and then I'd be getting up at 4 or 5 in the morning, and I'd start again before the children got up. So you can do that if you want to, but that's going to lead to burnout. So being aware of what do I want out of my business, what do I want for me in my business? Do I want to be the best possible version of myself? Or am I going to push myself to burnout?
I'm just thinking the challenge sometimes is people's identity sometimes is linked to their business, was linked to their work or whatever it is that they're doing. So I don't know, how do you then separate the two? Because if your world is pretty much revolving around what you're doing, then how then do you separate the two?
I suppose it's doing it in your head first, and if you can, physically separating it.
Okay.
So having a workspace. So I have like a caravan in my garden that I work in. I don't go in there with the kids, they're not allowed in there. So I know that when I leave my house, even though it's literally out the door and it's there, it's a different space. So if you can have a different space, and I know that's difficult for people doing it in their own houses, but it maybe is having a setup that's a desk that you take away when the job ends. So you're kind of packing that away, so it's not there, you have your personal space. And it is hard, because my job, at one point, I was still sort of recovering and coming out of depression. I was working with 18 people at the same time, and I was 9 in the morning till 9 at night, happily doing it because I love my job. And that's the thing, if you love your job...
Because that's what I was going to say, passion. When there's passion linked, your heart is there as well. It's not just a number or a thing you have to do, you're invested in it. So
yes. So you have to then decide, if I continue with this, where will I be? If I want my business to go on for 10 years, 20 years of the rest of my life, what happens to me if I continue at this level? Because I couldn't, I'm going to say I couldn't, I probably could, I have this end, I don't know where the energy comes from, I would just keep going, and I think it's more determination as opposed to maybe energy. But longer term, where would I have been if I'd have continued at that rate, working 5 days a week, 9 in the morning till 9 at night? That was not...
You'll crash.
Yeah, at some point you will. So if you look at where your business is headed, you've done your business plan, do a well-being plan. Have a framework. We've worked on a framework together. Have a framework of well-being for your business, for you. So you know what you need to do on a day-to-day basis to look after yourself. Because no one, remember this, no one is going to step up and run your business the way that you run your business. If you have a partner, if you have many partners, no one's going to do it the same way you do it. They're not going to bring the same thing to your business. So whether you're on your own or not, So you want to be able to operate at the best of your ability at all times. So actually, this is an investment in your business, to invest in yourself. And I think we need to use the word more investment when it comes to well-being, and particularly with business, because it's easy to not.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, prioritize yourself, because if you can't look after if you're not at your optimum level, then you can't help anyone else. And it's all about the people, I think, not necessarily the business, but you got to make yourself about the people, I think, because that's everything, isn't it? Unless you're, a robot developer, then maybe not. But then the robots are there for the people, so it always comes back to you and how you are with people, and I think you need your energy to be tip top. Yeah, that's pretty good.
And put it in your diary.
Yeah, I think being more intentional, because that's what I'm thinking. All of this is all good, but then it might feel like a lot, like I've got my business still, I've got all of these other things to do, and then you're saying I should be how do I practically do that? But I think, like you said, if it's putting it in your diary, then it's there, so you can't run away.
And part and parcel of how your business works, because if you bring somebody in, so I would never expect, so I'm licensing my program eventually, I would never ever expect somebody to come in and work 9 to 9, never. That's not for somebody else to do. I would never want somebody to do that, feel that they have to do that. I'm happy to do it.
But why exactly? Okay, all right.
My business, and I love the job, but I'm aware that if I continue to do that, so then create the business that you would hand over to somebody else and know that you would want them to look after themselves. You wouldn't want them to break. So create that pattern of working as if you're doing it for somebody else. Even if there's no intention to bring anybody else on, because you look at it from a different perspective.
Yes, definitely. We do tend to neglect ourselves more, don't we? So
that comes to self-talk as well, I think. You want to speak to yourself in your head how either you would want to be spoke to, or how you'd speak to someone that you maybe love, because you should be creating self-love and for yourself, really. I wonder if we could talk maybe a few examples of what someone could do to, like, practical things that you could do to look after your mental well-being.
As we're starting the business, as they're looking at that, or as in the business?
Yeah, no, I guess, you mentioned, like, meditation. Is there anything else that you probably put in on a suggested list of things that people could do?
Yeah. Time out is definitely the thing. If you can, time out from anything and everything, because it's something that we don't do. So time out where you turn everything off and you kind of no phone on, no distractions whatsoever, and you can actually, if you take that time out, you may be more creative.
You will be.
Yeah, exactly. So I think if you look at the benefits of taking time out, like I don't have much time. With my daughter plays for Cardiff City, so we're up in Cardiff 3-4 nights a week. I mean, it's slowed down now. So then I have to be aware that I'm locked off at that time when I'm taking her up. But I also have realised, I went to the beach, I think last weekend was the first time I've been to the beach, probably since last summer, and I love the beach. But I hadn't put that time in my diary. I hadn't locked it off. I hadn't even thought about it for such a long time, because I'm trapped in Cardiff, or I'm going to football with somebody else, or I'm going to athletics with somebody else, or my business needs me. But if I put it in my diary,
you will do it.
Yeah, and I'm taking time out to put my feet in the sand, put my feet in the water, to be freezing cold on the beach where the wind is blowing. That just gives me time away from thinking about anything.
Yeah.
And I think it's unless you see it as important, then that's going to be tough. So let's flip the mindset around well-being. Your well-being for your business is important, as your business is. We know that you love your business, and you go into source the resources for your business to run well. If you're not running well, those resources mean nothing.
Yeah.
Your business isn't going to mean anything without you. And as I said earlier, and I think I want to drill this up, nobody will step up and do that business the way you do it, regardless.
Yeah.
Because you want it a certain way, you have it planned a certain way, you bring something to that business. Nobody stepped up for me, not as parent or with my business, because I didn't tell people, but they didn't want to see either. So unless you're invested in looking after yourself, you kind of, I'm going to say you're going to let your business down, and I know that's going to sound like a big pressure, but you're going to let yourself down because you deserve to look after yourself. When you're running a business, particularly when you're delivering services to people and helping other people, you deserve to look after yourself.
I think on that, because you said delivering service, especially helping other people, I think it's a key thing because a lot of people are either I'm sure for therapists they're trained to do this, but then some people are in roles where they're not. Okay, actually, which is actually really, important. How do you take care of yourself, especially when, like the job that you have? I think it must be a lot because you take so much on, and I'm sure you have boundaries or you try to set boundaries, but realistically, how do you physically separate, work and people's burdens that they throw on you from what reality is for you as well?
So I'm quite lucky that the program takes them through this process and express and release it. I do the same. Oh. So while they're going through that process, so I don't take any of their emotions on whatsoever. It's quite unique because so they come into the caravan, we do all this really deep-rooted work, and yet there's no energy left in the caravan, and I don't take anything home with me. There may be a situation where I think, do you know what, that would benefit them to know that, or right, I've got a question for them to ask themselves. I do that, but I don't take any of it on. Oh, yeah. But that's not necessarily how all people. You go into helping people because you're empathetic. Dangerous skill. Lovely skill. To be empathetic is wonderful. But unless you can zip that off and leave the problems with them, you really have to have, this is not my problem. And I'm not saying it's easy, because if you're empathetic and you've gone into that kind of career, it's not easy.
Because even just in the charity sector, it doesn't mean maybe you have to be a coach or a therapist or whatever. Just working in the charity sector, for example, you will see a lot and you will take that home. So yeah, just creating
But being sure to have a way of offloading, and again, right, it's not the situation, it's the emotional impact. So if you have a family that you're working with, or you have a situation that's gone on that day, it's okay to go and talk to colleagues about what you've seen today, but are you looking at the emotional impact? There's the thing that's going to have the possibility of knocking you off your feet. So if you're carrying the emotional impact with you constantly of this family, then the next family and the next family and the things going on in your life, you have this, yes. Yeah. So it's being able to recognise that has had an emotional impact. What is it? How do I release it? And I can give you a way of doing that is process and express and release, and is making sure that you let it go, or you let that problem be where it needs to be, and don't be accountable for their emotional state, because that can be really tough, can't it? When you're working with people who are struggling with things, we want to help them, we want to make sure that they get the best care. We can invest emotionally, but as I'm saying, I know how hard it is, but it's so important to do that, to have that boundary of that's their issue, and I'm more than happy to help them with it, but it's not my emotional basket to take on and take home with me.
When you reflect, the emotional, what did you say? Looking at the emotional, the emotional impact, as opposed to just retelling or rejigging the events as they happened, which is something that I think we just tend to do. Even when you reflect and you say, "Oh, I'm reflecting on my day," you then reflect on
the situation.
Exactly, the sequence of events, as opposed to how did that make me feel.
And that's the key, isn't it? Because we can talk about what we've been through. We will talk about what we've been through, but we won't talk about the emotional impact because
it's harder though, isn't it?
It is, because sometimes we don't recognise it.
Yeah.
And it can take a little while before we understand that actually that had made me feel really sad, or that's really resonated with me because of something I've been through in my life. Yeah. But until we learn that as a natural thing, we're going to be stuck in this. We'll talk about what we've been through. Yeah. And I think sometimes, in work and in business, it can be a real emotional roller coaster, and you won't acknowledge the emotional impact. You'll acknowledge, oh my gosh, I missed out on a bid, or I didn't get the paperwork on time, or I haven't put my accounts in on time, and you can do all those things, but there will be stress, sadness, frustration, anger, resentment sometimes because the business is so busy, or things are not going the way that you want them to go. So there's all that emotional impact that we kind of just suck it up. And we carry that around, and then that's when we get more stressed and we become more anxious, and we start to not cope as well. So this is for me why the emotional impact is the important bit, because you see that their resilience will be lower, the ability to cope with things that last week they would have flown with. This week they are not coping with it because their emotional vessel is fuller, and therefore they don't have the same capacity to cope with whatever that is.
So what can we do as a friend, a partner, a colleague, if we do notice something is different about somebody else? How could we practically help people then?
I suppose that the first question is, how are you feeling? But don't stop at that one. Is that I always go with, is that your default answer? And they always laugh because they know it is.
Exactly.
If you ask is that your default answer, you'll know by their response. And then it gives you an opportunity to say, okay, well, how are you really feeling? What is really going on for you? And there's a different question. What is really going on for you? Because then you start to look, well, actually, I am really stressed. My business is not doing as well, or my family life, or both of them are erupting, and I'm really stressed with things. Whereas we've got a tendency to say, you okay? And then that's it. And everybody goes, yeah, I'm fine. Okay, great.
And it's very casual, because I think that's what I was even thinking earlier. I'm like, I think one of the most important questions that we don't really ask, we ask, you okay, how are you? But then we don't ask it. We just, it's almost like hi. And then just, so like you say, we have default answers, I'm good, and then that's it. But then we don't actually ask, how are you really? So.
And I think, again, if you use what is going on for you is a different question. Even if you open with, I've noticed you're not quite how you have been for a while, is everything okay? That's a different question. And if you bring in different questions, they are going to respond differently.
And it shows also that you care, because I think sometimes people just don't have that in, where they're going through things, but then you just can't just randomly come and say, okay, Ryan, I'm straight. And some people can, but then some people can't just ask for help. But then if somebody else comes and then says something, then it opens up that door for them.
I like to see it as like like a depth, like to go deeper, and then there's like a surface level, and that's another thing about like society. When we're looking at social media, everything is quite surface level. Whether you're putting up a photo, or you're putting a really edited post that you're saying life's perfect kind of thing, that's very almost like we're being trained to live on the surface, just by default through society, technology, where like I really like to go like try and set the base with people I know to like a deeper level. So I don't know, I feel like I do just like to talk about stuff that maybe other people might not. And that's just what maybe I've noticed through interactions in life, where for whatever reason, I don't know, fear maybe controlling people, they don't want to go to that deeper level because it's scary, what might you see, and vulnerability. So I like to see it as like a surface, and then the depths, and the lower you go, the more you'll kind of uncover, because then that's the unconscious, the subconscious mind then, and apparently that's like a huge percentage of our mind is the unconscious, like an iceberg. The surface level, the stuff we speak about day to day, is like less than 20% or something around there.
I can see that.
And the rest is these unconscious processes, the animalistic kind of signals that we're getting.
I think the connection comes there though. The deeper you go in those levels, the bigger the connection with somebody. Because if you start with, people aren't going to open up straight away. If you've never done it before, and all of a sudden you're going, how are you? How are you really? They're like,
what are you doing?
Yes. Where did this come from?
It's almost like a red flag.
What do you want here?
Like the life coach, kind of, joke that he's trying to life coach me.
Yes, and starting to lay the foundations of, this is how I want to relate with you. This is how I want to communicate with you. I understand that maybe we've not done this before, but can we do that? And I think it's easier surface level. We're very surface level led, because that's where I'm going to say the not so real problems are. So, and we can solve a lot of the surface level stuff. We can kind of overcome that, but the deeper stuff, people don't want to. Will I overcome it?
Takes more work.
It does take more work. It takes more energy.
Yeah.
But it's longer lasting results.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's where you find your true self, really, what makes you tick, which is what helps you orientate in the world and everything else. So it is very important and valuable.
I love that orientating yourself in the world. I think that's a fantastic way of looking at it. And I in my head, I have a person who's in the middle of the whole world, and they're just starting to figure out how they like things, how they see things, and you know, perception's wonderful, isn't it? I love perception, but it's as evil as it is great, because people see so many different things. So this is something that, you know, in your business, you're looking at your business sometimes from the inside out. You see your business and that's all you can see. And everybody else is having fun out there, they're successful, and your business is struggling, and you don't lift your head up to actually see what's going on. You just perceive that everybody else is doing so well, so you're self-punishing all the time. And you're comparing with that. When you lift your head up, actually they're not doing so well either. They are struggling. They just you've just not noticed that they're struggling in a different way. And I think we have to learn that we need to stop. At some point we need to stop and look at everything. And I like that, orientating yourself in your business, orientating your business in the world, orientating you in your business. How do you want to be in your business? How do you want to be in your life? Because both will have an impact. So your life will have an impact on your business will have an impact on your life. So being able to, is it balance, I don't know, or integration, I'm not sure. I don't know.
Both, it can be both. I think what you said about orienting yourself or just reviewing, because for me what helps when I'm sort of maybe feeling really overwhelmed or anxious is just stripping everything away and then coming back to the drawing board. Literally, what am I trying to do? Why am I trying to do it? Okay, what route can I take? And then after that, firstly, I just become calmer. And then now I've got a clearer picture, because most of the time it's when you're challenged with a problem and then now you're just so stuck in it. Maybe you've gone down one particular route and then it's just failing. So I think that just helps me, firstly, just calm down and be back to okay, but then also actually solve the problem. So I think, like you're saying, just orienting yourself in your world, in the world around you, is just such a key thing to do.
Yeah, it's a lovely way of looking at it. And the world is going to throw challenges.
Constantly.
Well-being challenges, mental challenges, business challenges, work-related challenges, family challenges. We are going to face challenges. So if we know how we deal with challenges, like you say now, I know that if I've gone down that route, I need to pull myself back and give myself more options. Great, because you know what you need to do. It might take you a little while down that route before you do it, but that's okay, because the more aware you become, the sooner in that journey you'll start doing it. So that awareness of how I am in a given situation is so important. So important to well-being and business.
Actually, I think, because I'm just thinking we need to do more of, if something makes you happy, then if something happens and then you feel something, I think it's just uncovering, it's just figuring out what has made me feel this way, and then that way we're just becoming a lot more in touch with who we are, basically. And when you're speaking, I think you mentioned boundaries. One thing that came to my mind was, I think relationships around us really are one of the most important things that dictate who we are in ourselves, but then who we are in terms of, of anything really. So how do we go about creating, firstly figuring out who should be around us, and then secondly creating those boundaries with people that might not serve a very good purpose in our lives.
So for me, it's going back to your foundation. So your values are really important, because you don't have to have exactly the same values as anybody, but values need to align. So when you're thinking about your boundaries, if you know what your relationship boundaries are, if you know what your professional relationship boundaries are, I see so many, I'm in quite a few female-only business groups, and I see a lot of them making the same mistakes, in that they've allowed people to take a little bit more, and then all of a sudden they've had to say, well, it stops now. But how do you say stop now when you've allowed all of that taken? So if you know what your values are, then you start to go, okay, so this person, I don't particularly connect with them. They don't seem to have the same values as me. So they're not somebody I would bring into my business or bring into my life. But we don't do that. I say all the time, risk assess. when it comes to relationships, risk assess.
Right.
But it's a really formal term, isn't it? Risk assess. Okay, get my clipboard out. Actually, no. What do you want out of this relationship? What do you want to put into this relationship? Where's the compromise going to be? If they disagree with you, how are you going to compromise? Will you be able to compromise with that person? Are they the type of person that you know you can have a conversation with, that eventually you can agree to disagree and then come back together and work on whatever you've got to work on? Is that the person that's going to make you happy, although it's not their job to make you happy? Are they going to enhance your life? And I think when you start to know your boundaries, and back to self-knowledge, you start to know your values, you start to know your boundaries, you know how far you want people to take things. And that changes from person to person. You may allow them to take this much, that person is not allowed to take that much. They can only take a little bit. And that's fine, because you have flexibility in your boundaries. Your boundaries are never set in stone, but they are definitely, they need to be like a boxing ring, where they are flexible. They set initially, and then they flex when you need them to flex. So you may have a business partner, your values align, and you've worked them for a year, and then all of a sudden they've completely sideswiped you and come with a completely different perspective on something, and you did not expect it at all. But at least if you've handpicked them well, you will be able to speak with them, communicate with them, understand their perspective, they can understand yours, and then you can work through it. But if you've picked somebody who is obnoxious or not communicative at all, it's going to really end badly.
Okay, so the key thing first is, again, picking the relationship or associating with people that align with you. But then, like you mentioned, sometimes you then figure out some of these values once you're already in some of these relationships. So how do you then just go about enforcing them once, because sometimes you're already in it? So how do you go about enforcing those?
You've got to know your boundaries first. And I do this with parents a lot. Know what you want out of that relationship. Know what you want the boundaries to be. Know your boundaries. Know they're your boundaries. So you start with them as well. Have the open conversation, and when you've gone that far, you can still have an open conversation. I made a mistake with somebody recently. We didn't have a conversation about money. So I had a previous relationship with them in terms of a business relationship where I'd supported them. No money was talked about, no money was taken. Then this happened, and all of a sudden there was a bill at my door. And I was like, oh no, this is not the first time I've done this. So I decided to communicate it openly and honestly. This is how it is. This is my accountability. I'm taking complete accountability for this. This is what's happened. This is who I am in that situation. This is what happens for me as a result of situations like this that I put myself in. I put myself in it. Completely understood. She went, okay, great, let's resolve it. So I'd already allowed all those boundaries to be kind of mowed down, but having that open conversation with somebody. So when you know what you want to communicate, and you know this is what the outcome I want, then you can work with that, even if you're that far down the line. But until you know what your boundaries are, you've got to know them first.
It's like converting the deeper stuff that makes you tick into some sort of communication, and just bringing that to the surface in a kind of respectful kind of way, where you're not just lashing out almost because you haven't done that work. And you bring that out and just communicate it, and the people you want to work with ideally are the ones that are going to hear you out and try and understand you. So,
but if you know what you want out of that relationship and what you're going to put in, then from the start you can have that open conversation. But even if you decide halfway through that relationship, you think, right, we need an open conversation, then it's up to you to be strong enough to open that conversation and say, right, I think it'd be really good at this point that we need to sit down and talk about where we're at. I want to hear your perception, I want to hear your opinion, and I want to give mine as well. And invite them. Whether this is, I see this a lot in parenting groups, particularly on Facebook. They've not set boundaries because they've done a particular type of parenting, and then they get to 14, 15, and these children are obnoxious and rude and disrespectful, and it does happen in business as well. But you then have to decide, right, what did I do there? If you're back to assessing, okay, what have I done in the past year? Where have I made my mistakes? Same with business partners or people who you want to collaborate with. Where did I make a mistake, and offer that, and then invite them to give you their opinion, their side of the story.
And not just assuming, like you said, don't just, because I think sometimes we do assume that, okay, they're gonna know, and then it just takes us down another wall. But then I think just speaking about it openly will help massively.
Yeah, we fear rejection. I fear rejection. Rejection's a big thing for me. So that email that I'd sort of back and forth with that lady, I wanted to do my email because I wanted to kind of have the evidence that I didn't know I wasn't scammed. I was taking accountability. And it was good for me to do that. I took my time. I wasn't emotionally fueled. It's easy to get emotionally fueled, particularly if you're emotionally restless. You get emotionally fueled and you jump in with both feet. But actually, if you take the time to go, right, what do I want the outcome to be? Okay. It's knowing do I want this relationship to end? Is that what needs to happen here? Can I control this? Can I, if I take this down this route, how will they react? And it's being mindful of what you're putting in as well as what you're getting out. So if you're coming to the table and you've gone, right, let's have a discussion, and you come and you're all, well, I want that, you've set the tone there. Whereas, okay, can I invite you to sort of give me your perception of what you're seeing at the moment in this situation? Completely different way.
And being open, just actually being open to receive as well.
Yes, yeah. Criticism. We don't like criticism. Nobody likes criticism. But actually, if we use it as feedback, then, okay, whatever they say, I'm going to use to make my way of dealing things better. Yeah. And I think I think everything's a life lesson. It's not easy. Not every lesson is an easy lesson, but everything is an opportunity to learn.
I think I like thinking like that, in terms of, sometimes people regret doing things. I'm like, I never live with regret, because again, it's just always, even if I messed up badly, I know there's something I've learned from that experience. So it's just flipping sort of the mindsets around things.
Absolutely. And what a wonderful thing, because you've come away with more self-knowledge. I will never do that again. I will never go down that route again. But, and that for me, with this particular situation, I will never put myself in that position again. And I've needed to do that. I've needed to do that for a long time. I got caught a couple of years ago, exactly the same situation, where money wasn't talked about, and I ended up having to pay. So I'm not putting myself in that position again. I needed to get to this point, obviously. And I don't think anything is horrific, anything is really bad. Like you said, even if it's a really bad mess up, if you take time to reflect on it in a way that, what can I learn from this? What can I take forward? It changes the impact on you as well.
Yeah, definitely.
The Welsh Dream, the idea is kind of keeping the talent in Wales, because a lot of people come to Wales or live in Wales, they hone their skills here, and then they'll go somewhere where there's better jobs. But we've had a lot of successful people kind of just stay in Wales and then go out to the world from there, but keeping this as their base. So that's kind of the goal, I'd say. Do you want to add anything to that, or does that kind of sum it up?
No, I think it does sum it up. And it's also just having people in Wales just thrive and succeed. And that's why I think entrepreneurship is a big part of it, because it's helping people firstly make money from their side hustles or from their passions, but also at the same time creating opportunities where there might not be any opportunities. And apart from that, I think it's just making sure that everyone thrives. And I think a big part about, you mentioned, just not living or surviving and just actually thriving. I think a big part of thriving is people's well-being needs being met. So I think that's what we're just trying to achieve in terms of as an ideology for what the Welsh Dream is. So we just invite you to tell us what your Welsh Dream is, what your ideal for the Welsh population, be it young or old, anybody really, for that to be.
Yeah, I think I love Wales, right? It is such a beautiful place, but there are a lack of opportunities here. But as you said, if you've got entrepreneurs coming through the system and building businesses here, potentially we have more jobs in Wales and we have more opportunities. But for me, the Welsh Dream for me is that everybody has the opportunity and takes the opportunity to be the best version of themselves, wherever that is. Whether it's in work, whether it's at home, whether it's with your business, whether it's as a parent. But if you take the opportunity to be the best version of yourself anywhere, you'll be the best version of yourself everywhere.
Everywhere. Oh, I like that. Oh,
That's what I like.
oh, that's a nice place to end. Oh, thank you so much for coming, Hayley. We really enjoyed this.
Thank you.
I've thoroughly enjoyed, and I've done my thing that I like to speak, so I've managed to speak all day.